So, Michael, what were the influences of the 7 planets?
Yes, it was believed that each planet had its own set of influences which it exerted over Earth and over people, and even over the metals in Earth's crust. And the best of the planets, the one with the most favourable set of influences, was Jupiter in the 6th heaven. Jupiter was the king. His influence was regal and sovereign and majestic. He was related to all things royal and ceremonial and festive and grand and solemn, but also magnanimous and leisurely and prosperous. He was associated with happiness and halcyon days, jollification, all good things really. His set of influences was really buoyant and jovial. Jove, Jupiter are different names for the same character in mythology. We sometimes still use the word jovial to talk about a person with, a very agreeable, relaxed, but kind of in control temperament, governing themselves and governing their lives very capably and relaxedly. That's connected with the jovial or the Jupiter influence. So when C.S. Lewis came to use these symbols, these spiritual symbols, as he called the planets, in structuring the Narnia books, it was natural for him to take as his first planet Jupiter, because Jupiter was the best. And it's out of Jupiter symbolism that he structured The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, of course, is easily his best known work. And it's a story of kingship. Aslan, the Christ character, is introduced as a king. You remember, the children don't know who he is to start with. They think he might be a man, but they're told, no, he's the king of the wood. He's the king of the beasts. He's not safe, but he's good. He's the king. It's repeated several times that he's to be thought of as king before anything else. And his father is the emperor over the sea. And Aslan has a royal pavilion and a crown and a standard and all these royal trappings. But it's not just Aslan who has this jovial quality of kingship about him in this first Narnia book. It's also the children. The children, first of all, when they get into Narnia, they find these coats in the wardrobe, long fur coats, and we're told that they look more like royal robes than coats when they put them on. And that's a little indication of where the story is leading. The story is leading towards, the grand climax when they become kings and queens, when they're crowned and sceptred and hailed in that glorious coronation scene in the castle of Cair Paravel. And then if you look more closely at the way the plot develops in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, it's actually a clash of kingship between Peter and Edmund. Edmund wants to become king of Narnia under the White Witch. She's ensnared Edmund with her promise that she wants a boy who will be king of Narnia after she's gone. And that's what motivates Edmund. He wants to become king, and he wants to pay Peter back for being nasty to him. We tend to remember the fact that Edmund is captured by the Turkish delight. But actually the Turkish delight is, if you like, just the bait on the hook. And what reels Edmund in to the White Witch's evil plans is the promise of becoming king. That's what really motivates him. Peter, on the other hand, he is shown the 4 thrones in Cair Paravel. Aslan says to Peter that he is going to sit as king, high king, in one of these 4 thrones, and he will be king over all the rest. And that of course, is what happens at the end of the story, but only after Aslan has demonstrated true kingship in sacrificing himself in order to ransom Edmund.
That's right.
As I looked into how C.S. Lewis understood jovial symbolism, I discovered that even the sacrifice of Christ was part of it. Because if you look in a very little known book that Lewis wrote about the poetry of Charles Williams, Williams was a good friend of C.S. Lewis, and And Lewis wrote a book about Williams, and he pointed out how Charles Williams understood Jupiter as a kingly planet, and in particular, the great red spot on Jupiter, this what astronomers call Jupiter's eye, the great red eye or the great red spot. Williams associated that redness with blood. And Jupiter, the planet of kingship, bleeding from this symbolic wound on its surface, became for Charles Williams a symbol of the divine King, Christ, wounded and bleeding on the cross. And Williams put that symbolism into one of his poems, and Lewis comments about it quite clearly in his book on Williams. So when in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Aslan, the king, the jovial king, dies and bleeds for Edmund's sake in ransoming, redeeming him from the power of the White Witch, this blood, this sacrificial blood, is yet another manifestation, if you like, of the Jupiter symbolism, which is running through the whole story.
In some sense, the White Witch is offering Edmund a bribe which is already his.
That's right, yes. She's offering him the chance to become king, and in fact, Edmund is already destined to become a king. But the question is, who's going to be High King? Who's going to be in charge of the whole show?
Okay, did Jupiter have a bad influence, by the way?
None of the planets actually have a purely negative influence. Their influences were all good, but they could be turned to bad effect if you receive them in the wrong way.
So Edmund wanting to become
king in the wrong way.
Oh, I see.
That's the Jupiter influence turned
on its head.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.